team. In this video, we will go over the process of inputting an initial evaluation or reassessment into Fusion. So the first thing you're going to do is schedule an appointment on your calendar for an initial evaluation or a reassessment. You're going to mark the appointment as checked in. After the end of the session, before you leave the house, you're going to need to go to the Docs section, find the daily note from that day's session, and open that note. It is okay that it says this patient has no ST diagnosis, because this is going to be your initial visit with the family, unless it's a reassessment, and if it's the initial visit, the patient may not have a diagnosis yet. For subjective, you're going to fill out, that you did an assessment, who was there, how the patient's demeanor was throughout the assessment. Normally, there will not be any information under the objective, like there will be no goals, but because this is our test patient in our system, there have been goals added previously, so that's why those are showing up. You're gonna, for the plan, you can say score, assessment, and determine eligibility. Then before you leave the appointment, you need to collect the visit signature, because that will be important to have a signature on the evaluation report from the family. You need to make sure that the billing code for the initial assessment is going to be 92523. If it is a reassessment, then you do bill 92507, but for the purposes of this video, we're going to pretend that it is an initial assessment. You would then sign the daily note. Once you score the assessment, then you're free to go to the initial evaluation section on Fusion, open up the document, and here is where you will add the diagnosis code. Plus diagnosis, we have diagnosis codes for mixed receptive expressive, we have just expressive language, we have phonological disorders, but I'm going to do mixed receptive expressive for today. You would then save the diagnosis. You would add in information in the patient history. This gives you options for different areas that may have information that you could have collected during the initial assessment. You can add that to the patient history, and then you will talk about if they've received treatment before, their current level of function, feeding history, and then you can also note the parent and caregiver primary concerns. For the tests and measures, we're going to hit plus tests. These are all of the assessments that are already included inside of Fusion. Once you add the test to your assessment, a short blurb with the test description will show up in the final copy of the report. However, it's not going to show up in the draft of the document as you are editing. So let's say we gave the CAP and the PLS. We'll add those test measures. Then it will pull forward all of these boxes that you can then fill out with regard to any articulation errors you noted. These are all test specific, so depending on if you give the OWLs or the SELF, it will all have any of the boxes that you would like to fill out with information that you collected. So let's just say we can put the standard score there. And then we can scroll down to the PLS, and we'll just input some standard score, or raw scores, excuse me. And then we'll scroll down to add your findings. So say we tested articulation, we did a feeding assessment, we got some feeding history, excessive language, expressive language, receptive language. Add your assessment sections, and the most important thing you're going to need to do for each of these areas of findings that you include is you're going to note in each of them if it is within normal limits, within functional limits, or impaired, and then always include the severity level of impairment. Here with this articulation one, it gives you the option to fill out all of the different sound errors that you saw during the assessment. You can talk about intelligibility, which is great for some of those younger kiddos who may not have such a super low articulation score. However, they may not be very intelligible because they may have so many errors in their speech. Scrolling down, you'll see that here's where the feeding assessment is. It has all different areas that you are able to assess and comment on. Even further down, we will get past that to look at the feeding history, where you can talk about anything that you collected from the caregiver. Scrolling down, you're going to get to the language area where you talk about the expressive language. Here's where you note, the function, the severity. You can talk about a language sample, MLU, and then finally you're going to get to the section under clinical impressions, and there's going to be strengths. I generally like to note at least 3 strengths that I noticed during the assessment. Performance impairments are going to be those overall weaknesses that you noted during the assessment. Functional limitations are going to be how their communication skills affect their ability to function on a daily basis, whether it be communicating with their peers, their parents, other family members, their teachers at school. The summary section is where you're going to give an overall summary of what the diagnosis is, what your recommendation will be, and how many times a week and for how long the sessions that you're recommending should be. Patient education for us is almost always therapy is provided in the natural environment, so patient education is ongoing. Here is the goals section. Like I mentioned, this patient has goals already because he's our test patient. To add goals during your evaluation reports, you're going to click down towards the left-hand bottom of the screen where it says goals, and then we're going to do ST goals, and here's where you will add goals. I'll show you how to go back and add these goals just for the purposes of this video. So you will hit plus goal, and you always have to have one long-term goal to start out before it will allow you to add any short-term goals. Every patient needs to have these home program goals. So you can just type LTG for that because we have it auto set up to pull up the long-term goal for the home program. And I always just put this as yes or no, target with yes. Then you're going to add the short-term goal, so you can search STG in the goal bank, and that will pull up the short-term goal for the home program. Then you can save the goal. Next, if you want to add goals for expressive language, you just again hit plus goal. Goal category is going to be expressive language. And you can type expressive and it will give you some different ideas, but this is kind of the one that I generally use for the overall long-term goal for expressive language goal. And again, I generally do yes or no for that. And then you can add short-term goals. We'll imitate environmental sounds. You can, choose a percentage, at least 80%. Obviously the goal needs to be more in depth than that. You can kind of choose how you write your own goals, but I generally like to say something like, we'll imitate environmental sounds in 80% of opportunities as measured by clinician observation over 3 consecutive sessions. And then we'll say that goal. Once you're done adding goals, you're going to scroll down to billing codes. For the billing codes inside the evaluation report, you do not put 92523. It's always going to be 92507 for speech. And then also if this patient has feeding, it could be 92526, excuse me. Save billing code. Then you're going to scroll down and edit your visit frequency. We previously used to put 4 to 5 times a month here. Now if you'd like to do 1 time a week or 2 times a week, I think that's okay. And then you're going to do 12 months for that. Intervention comments, you can make notes about, if it's if you decide to put the visit frequency as 4 to 5 times a month, then you can say 5 times a month with 5 weeks. If it's a patient who is twice a week, you're free to say 8 to 10 times a month, 10 times a month on months with 5 weeks. And then if you ever need feedback on how your report looks, you are able to add contributors to the document, and you can add myself to the document as a contributor. What that will do is, once you hit send a contributor, it will send the document to me, and then I will have the ability to review the document and send it back to you. However, it will lock you out of the document until I have time to review it, so please make sure that you don't need further access to it immediately after sending it to me. So then if you want to look and see what your document looks like, you can hit preview, and then you can scroll down and see that it does include a test description for you for the PLS, the CAP. It's going to have one for all of the assessments that we've already input into Fusion. Your goals start to show up. There's what your billing codes will be, your visit frequency, and then it would have your signature, and then it will also show the signature of the family from when you performed the initial evaluation. That's why it's important to collect those visit signatures. I believe that is it for the initial evaluation. The same thing is going to kind of apply to reassessments. However, on a reassessment, the patient will already have goals, but you will be free to go into the goals section during a reassessment and edit the goals to be new to match whatever findings you find on your reassessment. When you are completed, you would hit sign, and that will end the document.